I'm here with Chip Bristol. Chip is a graduate of Taft School and Hamilton College. He also holds a master's in divinity from Virginia Theological Seminary and a master's in fine arts and creative writing from the New Hampshire Institute of Art. Years in school ministry have prepared Chip well for this creative and accessible collection of spiritual meditations. He lives in Greensboro, North Carolina with his wife, Louise, and their combined family. And we are here to talk about Chip's new book. It's called Spiritual Java, Daily Cups of Inspiration. So how are you doing, Chip?
I'm well. Nice to see you, Brian.
Well, same here. It's always great to spend time with you, and I'm very excited about your new book.
Thanks.
But before we get into that, maybe you could kind of tell us a little bit more about yourself and how this book came about.
Well, it's you said a lot of my background. When I graduated from seminary, I knew I was not called to being a parish priest. I really wanted to be a school chaplain. And so my first job was in New Orleans at Trinity Episcopal School. And it's a K through 8 school. And somehow I missed it when I was interviewing. But when I arrived, they let me know that there was chapel every morning. And it was for everybody. And so I was faced with a lot of sermons needed every week, and also people who couldn't read to people who were just about to become cynical. And so it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because I learned how to speak languages that a lot of students, regardless of age or faculty, could understand. And that served me well. And so I was a school chaplain for many years and then a headmaster. So the book is in the style of, or are the sermons that I gave in chapels, and then the blogs since I left schools.
Interesting. So it is a daily devotional, basically.
365, which didn't seem like a lot until I started putting them together. So yes, there's one for every day.
Okay. And so kind of what's the theme, or what's the,
well, the title implies, I really believe that my voice is one that resonates with people who might have grown up in the church, but don't really go to church anymore, the spiritual but not religious folk. And I often think of them as the ones who gather on Sunday in the coffee shops. So this is, and the introductory story tells of this group of people who meet and talk, because I really believe that everybody I know is spiritually hungry. But sometimes the language of the church and the practice of the church get in the way. I happen to love the church and all of its practices, but for me, theology has never started with the church and then apply it to life. For me, everything has always been something that's happened in my life that points me then to God. And that's this devotional. There are going to be people, Brian, who think it's not churchy enough. There'll be some who think it's too churchy. You can't win. But they clearly are meditations based on my everyday life. And then what my everyday life, or that moment, that thing I heard, points me to on the spiritual realm. So that's just my approach. And I think it's as a result, it's very accessible to those, who don't maybe read devotionals on a regular basis. But we'll see.
Well, from what you just said, and knowing your career path and knowing it's clear how much you've been influenced by Frederick Beekner.
Oh, well, it's funny, because when I got my headmastership, when I finally got the job, I went to see Fred in Vermont and Ruth, and had soup in their kitchen, I remember, and I couldn't wait to get into his library, because I wanted to see the first edition Wizard of Oz books and see the license plate that he wrote about. And I'd read everything. And it was so funny, because I was so excited to finally be a headmaster. And so at some point I said, this is great. I'm going to run a school. And he said, why would you want to do that? but you know, I just love him to death. And he was right on so many levels, but you're right. I was so influenced by the sacred journey, and just the whole idea that our lives are sacred journeys. But like you at the last conference, when you said it's telling secrets that really rocked your world,
Yes.
I couldn't agree more. And I don't want to speak for him, but it was like it took the other two to get to telling secrets, where, you know, when you tell your story, you know, you tell it in different levels, and telling secrets just really, someday I'm going to get to the memoir side of things, but I'm not there yet.
No, I
Even though
totally agree with
all
you. As you read those three memoirs, the first three memoirs, Sacred Journey, Now and Then, and Telling Secrets, you could see his evolution of thought. I felt like,
Mhm.
you know, and it was just really.
But yes, evolution of thought, but also a willingness to really let it out.
Yes.
That whole stuff about his father, you know, it's in the first book, and yet it's not anything like what's in the third book.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like in recovery, and as you know, I'm in recovery, as people tell their story, they tell more of it as they grow less embarrassed and more willing to embrace the sacredness of even the messy stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And he was quite a role model at that, wasn't he?
Yeah, oh, so much so.
So back to the book, you know, kind of how is that distinctive from other devotionals?
Well, one person who wrote one of the blurbs on the back said that the thing he likes about my writing is that they're different, because I don't write them in the same formulaic way. I don't start with scripture and then explain it. And so I think it's varied. I think it's based on everyday things like soda bottles and walks in the woods and these kinds of things, and then points to the sacred. So it's in that direction that will be different. Then there was this other idea I had when I got into this, that I would write 3 questions after every meditation just for further thinking and reflection. I called it extra credit because I'm a school teacher. That's what I was thinking. But my editor, Rochelle Thompson, who is, we'll talk about her later, she's fantastic, said, no, it's not in keeping with spiritual Java. So those 3 questions are now called espresso shots.
Oh, that's awesome.
I love.
That is great.
Yeah.
Well, so I have to, you know, being a coffeeholic myself and increasingly selective about it as I get older, I have to ask you about what your favorite coffee is.
Oh, well, I used to be an owner of a I'm really into local coffee places. The chains, I know everyone's a Starbucks person. I'm much more of the independent places. So on my computer, I have the tags of all of the coffee shops I've sat in to write these meditations. And so the Green Bean is the place in Greensboro, North Carolina that I am most fond. And they have a coffee company called Java Joe. Joe Van Gogh is what it's called. And their dark roast has motivated me to write 365 meditations.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to see if I can order some.
Joe Van Gogh, you can. It's great.
Because I mean, I'm really into the very dark, you know, dark
French roast.
French roast coffee. And I keep trying things other than Starbucks. And I keep going back. None of them are satisfying enough to me as Starbucks dark French roast.
Good. Well, keep looking. Try Joe Van Gogh.
I'll try Joe Van Gogh. So the other thing I want to ask you about is the cover on the book. That is kind of amazing artwork.
Yes. I used to run a place called The Sanctuary, which was a spiritual center for artists and other misfit toys. And Dawn Ashby, who is the artist, worked with mentally handicapped people on the 3rd floor of the building. And she does these incredible art projects with them, but she's an artist in and of her own right. And So I always have loved her art. So I went to her and just said, look, I'm going to do this. Here's sort of my sketch. Can you go do a Dawn thing to this? And she did. I mean, I just love, it's a multimedia piece. And I just love it.
It's very cool.
Well, she and I are going to do a children's book next, which will be fun.
Excellent. Excellent. So the other part about this was that you self-published.
I did, and that's only because of you, big boy. You helped me realize that it's possible. And you also showed me the economic advantages to it. But more than that, there's no gatekeeper. I'm sure there's, so many reasons why this shouldn't be published, but I'm more convinced that it holds its own. So I really celebrate this really paradigm shifting publishing world. But the thing you said at the conference that I went to I think it was in Raleigh. In Raleigh, was that just because you self-publish doesn't mean you do it by yourself. So I approached Rochelle Thompson, who works for Forward Movement, which is the Episcopal arm. And she had once done a book of meditations of which I was one of the contributors. And I loved it so much. I went to her and said, would you ever work with me and just let me do all 365? So she didn't do it as an employee of Forward Movement. She did it independently. And that was the smartest thing I ever did, because she brought a team of people, a layout designer, proofreader, all these people, and it transformed my stuff. Right down to, the Dawn did the cover, but then the Carol Miller did the layout and the production, and Michelle DeMoss Phillips did the design. And if you look at what I sent you, the pages have coffee stains.
Yes, I love it.
And I just love it, because my theology is all about the fact that we're all, imperfect. We all have stains, but it's spiritual Java. It just works. I love it.
That is so cool. That is, and congratulations.
I would tell anybody who does it, just by self-publishing doesn't mean you're doing it alone. Get a team around you, particularly for your first one. I needed it.
Now, so does Rochelle and that group do work for hire?
They do now. She enjoyed this process so much that she said, send other people my way. So I don't know if she wants to work with me on the novel, which is what I'm working on now. But yes, she will work with anybody.
Oh, interesting. Well,
she's great.
Maybe she and I need to talk. So
I'll connect you through email after this.
Good. That'd be good. So maybe would you mind sharing like one of the devotionals with us?
I will. They're different, and I didn't know what to read, so I just literally opened it, and here you go. This is May 18th, and it's called Soda Bottle Theology, A Hole in the Soul. The first time I heard it, I gasped. Someone was reading from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and described a hole in the soul through which the wind blows. I knew such a hole in the soul, and I knew what it felt like when the wind blew through it. Like an empty soda bottle that whistles when you blow across its top, there's a sound when wind blows across a hole in the soul. What that sound says to each of us varies. But for those sitting in the circle that morning, the sounds were all about our shortcomings and mistakes, the mistakes we'd made. No wonder we drank to fill the hole. No wonder others fill the hole with packed calendars, work, sex, food, exercise, you name it. There are as many fillers as there are holes, but none can fill the hole, not completely and not forever. Some say we should fill the hole with God, but I have a slightly different take. I think we should keep the hole empty so that God can make music out of our emptiness. It's hard and humbling work to empty the holes we've filled for so long, but if we're able to do so, we can hear the magic of God's wind, which many call the Holy Spirit, blow across our emptiness. Suddenly, the imperfections and incompleteness we've tried to fill become music for others to hear. So that's the meditation. And then here's the espresso shots. 1, in what ways do you feel like there's a hole in your soul? 2, in what ways have you tried to fill it? 3, what would it look like and sound like if you stopped filling it and allowed God to blow through your emptiness?
How cool is that? That is wonderful, Chip.
That sounds like the others, but they're all different.
So what day of the year is that?
That's May 18th.
May 18th. I need to go look at May 18th. Good for you.
So,
that is so cool. I'm very excited, Chip, that you took, the effort to
Brian, when I was young and my father published some books, I always thought that when I got to this point, I would do it to feel better about myself or to achieve something. And I'll tell you, the thing that is so fun, and it's only been out for 2 weeks, is when people text you and say, I bought your book. That connection, and then when they start reading it and say, oh, I love, June 10th or whatever. That is why an artist makes art. It's to start this conversation. So I'm hoping that that's what's going to happen. And that's where I'm trying to do what you advise. I'm trying to create communities on Facebook and things where the conversation can become mutual. I'm not really well versed in all of that yet, but that's the magic of writing, spiritual writing, I think. It's not just telling people what you think, it's starting a conversation or getting people to think what they think and feel. I love that.
That's very cool. We're all on different spiritual journeys, right? And we're all learning, and none of us has reached the end of that, hopefully.
And we're not all that unique.
Yeah. Super. Well, how can people find the book?
It's on Amazon, Amazon.com, but it's also, I have a website, which is withoutacollar.com, which speaks to my own approach to ministry, because for me, I became a minister when I took off my collar. And that will be a memoir one day. But anyway, withoutacollar.com is my website. And then all the books are there and you can just click on the link.
Excellent. Well, I'll make sure.
Because Brian told me I'm supposed to have an updated website.
What a concept.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, well, I'm so excited, Chip, to see all the progress that you've made.
Great.
Since we first started.
Writing for your life has been a big part of it.
Well,
so thank you, Brian.
Well, this is a blessing to me to be able to do this stuff, but also to be able to see people like you thrive through it, and actually make things happen. And that's incredibly exciting.
Well, thanks.
So I will make sure to include a link to the website.
Great.
Your Facebook page on the video on when I upload it to YouTube.
Great. Thanks.
Well, good luck with, the rest of the launch and the book and the future books. And Chip, thanks so much for joining us and telling us your story.
Thank you, Brian.